Morning, everyone. I'm Gabriela Arenas. I'm co-founder of the Top Foundation. And Portrait fellow all my life, I have been passionate for art so much that I have specialized in arts as tools to promote peace and communities affected by violence in Latin America. It's a pleasure for me to be here at the second session of mental health organized by Glasswing International with the support of Category 2030. We will talk about the traditional practices for mental healing. This is fundamental for each one of us, for every one of us, because Latin America has facing important challenges in this regard. According to the health statistics, 24% of the population has mental disorders, neurological problems that into substances. Still, percent suffer some kind of dementia, 34% anxiety, and more than 5% have severe depression. So these challenges are more complex if we consider that there are people who require treatment for mental health and who don't receive it. If according to the WHO, our region has one of the most high rates for stigmatization for mental health problems. In spite of statistics, Latin America is one of the regions of the world with the highest knowledge in traditional knowledge, ancestral practices, uh, support those who have mental health issues to the point that its impact has been acknowledged by PAHO, considering it an important option in dealing with these problems in Latin America and the Caribbean. And to talk about this fascinating topic, there's a wonderful panel with me today. I want to introduce to you Sarah Omi. She's a chairwoman of the women also of Vera, Congress in Vera, in the Alto Bayonga in the Darien forest in Panama, with us also Juanita Serra, who is the director of the Collective Change Lab, a woman whom I admire a lot, who began her career working with remote communities and specialized in intergenerational trauma and power dynamics in the region, which is fundamental for healing processes. And finally, also Mr. Hector Aristizabal, who is a psychologist and artist, who was born in Medellin, and he founded Medinate Action to work in conflict zones using theater and other methodologies to explore alternatives in healing. So all of them have a wonderful experience and lots of knowledge in the area and what traditional healing practices are important for the region. I would like to start with Juanita, who has lots of experience, not only working with the communities, but also gathering all the knowledge. Please, Juanita, can you tell us about your practice working in the regions with ancestral practices in the region, how to use them with the intergenerational trauma? Thank you, Gabby, for introducing me and being at this panel. I say hi to my panelists. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you in this community that always makes your heart happy. And I'm Juan, as Gabi say, I'm Juanita, and my approach to intergenerational trauma and healing practices has been um, for my own reflection, for my personal reflection. As Gabi said, I grew up in Colombia in a very complicated time. I guess in Colombia, everyone has grown in a complicated situation. Uh, and I was, for the first time, I started thinking about what a trauma was, and collective trauma make the difference, between individual and collective trauma that we go through as members of a collective group. As I was living for 8 months, almost 1 year, in a very remote region in Colombia. At that time, it was the red zone. It was the zone of big conflicts where there were armed groups, paramilitary groups, the government, guerrilla, and the population was always in, intersection and the crossroads. So there was really no possibility in finding or choosing what you want to believe. You had to look just for survival with whoever who was at your side. And in a region where there was, in addition, there were marvelous natural resources, but there was no infrastructure. So there was there was an important structural poverty, even though important natural richness. So I came there because I am from Bogota. You know, I was a lawyer, and I came there to provide lots of solutions how to deal with the conflict. So my work was to train community leaders in conflict solving. And I had said, well, these are human rights. This is the way how to mediate. And when I came there, I realized that there is a reality that is totally different of what I had imagined, of what I had read from, and a reality that I had to be silent and learn how to observe. And really, be humble and realize that even if I came there to teach or know how to do this, my work or my job was to be silent and listen to and support for those who were working already in the solving of conflict for a long time. The most important or beautiful experiences that I had is that in this region there's lots of music. It's a region where music is so important. Vallenato comes from this region, which is part from our traditional music. And the way how, for example, one of the mediators, how we used to solve conflicts is through singing. This conflicts where I was legally responsible of solving those small conflicts, and that ended up being big conflicts. Conflict on limits or land property limits and so on. And this mediator, his name was Jacinto, and we came to these places and go through the small path. And he used to sit down, and he said, "You're going to talk, and you're going to talk." He said and told the parties to and listen to them. And after a while, in the midst of this beautiful nature, so abundant, so full of life, he remained silent, and then he started singing. And then he sang what he thought was a just or fair solution. And I don't know if it's through this singing or maybe in that time resonance in our bodies, or if because it's something so autochthonous. And we got cheered up. I mean, we people really were able to work and solve their problem, and that worked really and worked very, very well, I have to say. And we continued doing like this. I continued supporting, listening to him. Obviously, we prepared for the topic. We knew about what the conflict was about. We prepared. I really had a role in knowing how to listen to and provide support, but it was most of all learning, you know, seeing all the magic that happened at any time. So in this case, part of its trauma, part of its violence, conflict was not going to be solved. I'm not traditional. I mean, not legally traditionally in legal manners. This was going to be solved in manners that were traditional to the community. So that was the first lesson I learned, and I understood at that time that our humankind is more complex in our bodies, is more deep uh, than a series, of rational guidelines or standards. Even if they are important, they are not enough. We have lots of stories, but I will stop at this moment. Thank you. I know that there are lots of studies to share. So while you were telling this, I remembered the first experience I had working with indigenous in Vera, Colombia, in Risaralda. They had been displaced from their lands, and even they were going through a difficult situation. You know, they maintained their serenity and a connection with their land that was very impressive for me and taught a lot to me. And that is why I like Sarah Maida to tell us a little about her experience and how, from her role as leader of this community, as how she has seen the importance of traditional medicine, not only for indigenous populations, but also for all of us who learn this. Yes, I'm Omaira Katama, and I'm going to share also. It's an honor to talk about the mental health from the focus of a perspective of traditional healing methods of a community. And now with the designation that I have to talk about this important topic, it's important to know that the indigenous spirituality for us, um, there are four very important elements in the lives of women. But before all of this, I want to tell you that we are of the uh, artisan or association, women association in Vera in Colombia, and it has been a way of how we have uh, been able to. It's our livelihoods, and to that purpose, we have a platform, an organizational platform, and from the Western point of view, but since the 70s, my parents, my grandfather's parents suffered the being displaced from the best pieces of land that were overflooded because of the uh, energy plant that was established there. All of that, the farmland, all that is now underwater because of this um, energy plant construction. So if we see this, there is of course an in the mental health has been affected through that. But as I say, the four elements that sustain us have to do with spirituality, our anchor, and also the forest and our traditional medicines that are there to heal us in some way, psychologically. Also, water, which is fundamental for our life. A language in Bera language means nyamba, which means life. Pati nyamba, which is our way of breathing, a way of sustaining our life. So also fire, as I was saying, for important elements for the families in Bera. And when they talk about this topic of mental health, and seeing it from the perspective of the traditional medicine during the process in the 70s, I remember that when I was a child, I felt, uh, let's say, when I had certain type of pain, I went to my grandmother, and my grandmother always had a plant for me to heal. And I believe that it was like that I would have such and such pain. And if my grandmother bathed me with this medicinal plant, it would heal me. And this is part of the mental health. But also in the process where families are displaced to the territories that we are living on and in Bera, we can make a reflection of how we are today and how we used to be, what our story was, because our story is not a simply, I mean, it's so comprehensive, but in our way, in our journey, there have been negative influences. And in these practices, cultural practices that we have been copying or making our own, women in Bera, in the case of Panama, not only with COVID-19 and all the traditional knowledge that we received from our grandparents, practically the topic of inequity makes it so that we are more connected spiritually to this cosmovision that provides us strength. So in all of this, and in regard to my role as woman in Beta, I had to become a leader. Sometimes they ask us, have you also always been a leader? No, inequity is us as women to push and defend all the causes that have affected us for other uh, uh, customs or uses that have we have had to receive that, they cause confusion, I would say. And in this regard, indigenous women, when we don't know our story, we become weak. And it's here where if we talk, if I mention a clear example, like for example, when the COVID-19 pandemic arrived, it's young women, and we have strong grandmothers. But I can tell you that, for example, my grandfather was a wise man, a great leader, and also my father, who died in during the COVID-19 pandemic, by his knowledge was passed to me, and now I'm responsible of providing follow-up to that knowledge. Knowledge that is so important to continue in the process, building and helping other young people uh, grow for the present and for the future. And I'd also like to tell you that when we go to the forest and we are harvesting traditional medicines, it's like if we talk with the plants, it's these plants that have life, that connect with our energy. And this makes it possible for the patient to feel safe that what we are applying is medicine that will heal him, that will free him, because there are diseases, like you're saying, mental health, health diseases, um, and there are plants that where we just need to take a bath. We just need to cleanse us with, because it's that negative energy, because we have had energy loads in our work, and then we come back to our home, we are sharing this negative energies with our families, and sometimes this makes uh, it confuses your emotional state, or uh, in the family. So there are two ways. One is you take a bath and you feel like you are free, because those plants are there to free you psychologically. I have a Mari platform when people have checked in and have visited us, and they call us and they tell us all have been positive, all. And then when they take a bath with these plants and they leave our communities and go back to their homes, they find an open way where they feel spiritually um, big. Omaira, you're going to tell me a little bit more about that, because I also grew in a home where everything is cured with plants. So I guess the majority of us at home says something to drink when you have a headache or when you're nervous. But I would like to make the connection with this concept that Juanita and you shared: the listening, the tradition, the culture, the relation with nature, and the music, and connect with the work of her, because I have the experience that art has opened doors for me in marvelous communities in different parts of the world, where people don't speak the same language, where there's a conflict, a rooted conflict, possibly where people have multiple diseases, and art heals us. And Carlos, my partner at the foundation, he says art is life, and that has been um, part of your work, right, Hector? How has been art part of your healing? What has been your experience in finding healing through art? Well, thank you, Gabi. And what an honor to listen to you all, because this is um, I have this is has a resonance in my way of thinking. So I was educated in theater and in psychology. I became a psychologist because I knew how sick I was, and I saw around me enormous suffering. I was born in Colombia in a time where it was the most violent cities in the world. Well, there were 25 young persons were killed each day. The mafia, the drug traffickers were there aside of the army and the police, who oppressed all the people. And so that was the time where I lived, seeing people getting killed, friends from the university disappearing, tortured, killed. I myself was tortured by the army simply because of being a psychology student, also doing theater. But theater saved my life, literally, because it helped him to be someone whom I wasn't on, and it also activated my defense mechanism in traumatic experiences. The problem is when you just go there and you don't have a way out. So I feel that as human mankind, we have been maybe we have gone through, maybe in the Western world, we have lived a schizophrenic illusion where humanity and nature are separated, and the humanity is above the nature, or humankind is in the center of the nature anthropocentric view, I would say, that has allowed us to practically, during the last 80 years, to destroy more of half of life, people alive that are around 10 million at the risk of disappearing. So that view from being separated from the nature and all the rest of beings, but also from our bodies, we talk about mental health as if it isn't connected to our body in all the traditions and traditional cosmovisions that are uh, helpful to understand it. But the other thing is the separation between female and a masculine aspect, but the masculine above the feminine aspect and dominating it, and everything that is comes out of there has led us to a very destructive and painful patriarchal uh, for all men and women, and a separation from logos and the methods, the intuition, logos above the intuition. And Juanita described it very beautifully with this story. And you also, Gabi, when we work with conflict, it's not that you solve the conflict, because no conflict is solved, it is transformed. But when we use music, theater, it's dissolved in another substance, and that helps us to continue transforming ourselves and transform our emotions that we have due to conflict, the lack of imagination that we have around conflict, which generates violence. So, in my experience, what I think we are going through is an integration, is again going back and integrate all of those things that we have experienced in separate manner in this era of science that it pretends to explain everything, but it has for what the cosmovision and indigenous have not forgotten. So we're getting closer to what we already knew. I mean, it's interesting things, but I think that in understanding of who we are is part of the nature, is part of human beings of nature, not separated from nature, is what is guiding us to take a look at our ancestors. And most of all, here in the South, all the spiritual movement is now moving southwards. In Colombia, we have numerous encounters of wise people who are seeing and analyzing what is happening with humankind and how all the traditional medicine, the plants, ancestral plants are helping us to do psychological and spiritual journeys that are allowing us to connect and integrate again to what we are. And art, the other thing, art is the new name for a ritual. And the ritual is a way where humankind has healed since human mankind exists, is where we heal. Is that communion place between the human and the natural um, aspects. We use symbolic language to understand the mystery of death, mysteries that we don't know how to understand, mysteries of the big pain of being alive, because having a body is a pleasure. It's a pleasure and pain at the same time, because we see people that we see people that we know are going to die. We are all going to die, but we continue denying this, like it happened with COVID-19 and with being afraid, and with all the news, we became even more afraid. That's another thing in certain ideas into our. But now I think we are integrating again. And thanks to COVID, we are connecting with the whole world. Now, the metaphor that I like to use and that we use a lot in a project that we are carrying out here in Colombia is reconnecting. And this is now to the in the Commission of the Truth. We bring people that have been victims, and we bring them and take them to the big healer, which is the earth. We go there in natural environments. We use deep psychology and the work that helps us reconnect with nature. We also use theater and other art expression, and also the rituals for healing, to heal precisely the wounds. And I agree with you all that wounds that we call collective wounds, collective trauma is what we talk about. We are looking for collective healing is what all communities should know, because communities know that they cannot heal alone, because we are not alone in the world. We are interconnected, not only with the rest of human beings, but with all the beings. With our, as I say, what happens with nature happens to us also, and what happens to us it also happens to others. So that is why COVID-19 was a gift in a certain way, because it gave us the sense and understanding that we're all interconnected, and my healing has to be your healing, and vice versa. So we are there at this moment. It's a moment with enormous creativity. That's why we are having this important dialogue, which is between science and the traditional knowledge that are very, very valuable between human mankind and nature. And it's not because we just need to protect the natural resources, but because it's the life itself. And again, mental health is the health of everything. Now, stress is killing more people than any other disease, because it's the source of the majority of diseases, not being able to express and connect to your emotionality. It's the source of a lot of diseases. So art allows us to do that. Rituals allow us to do that. So to finish this introduction, I love this image of um, this mycelium, this where all the trees of nature are connected. So our work is the same. It's when a tree dies, for example, they are decomposed, and then the mycelium extracts everything that helps for your life. And we do the same with human pain. So we come there and find all this and find sense in all your pain to continue serving for life. Well, that's for those time being. Thank you. I love the image that you just showed. I remember an experience working in San Agustin in the southern part of Venezuela, a community affected by armed group. In this community, there are lots of families, and at that time, there was an artistic uh, work done with the children. They, at the beginning, showed or painted things that they were scared of, and painted them on paper, and then there was a dialogue and created the community they wanted to have. And that collective image is what they expected to build. And it was going from fear to understanding a possibility and hope. And this is a work that I know that Juanita and the Collective Change Lab have been doing with this dialogue circles to work in the communities. And I would like you, Juanita, to share a little about that experience and from going from the healing practices to change the narrative of the reality, which is very important to heal that reconnection of everything and realizing that it's ourselves, as Mayra was saying, with our minds, we make our bodies sick. It's us who separate ourselves from nature, how to come back in a community to connect with this. Very beautiful, Mayra. Very beautiful. Yes, what you have said. So much wisdom. I love stories. And I will continue with the second story, which was that I migrated to the United States. I came here and to study, but I fell in love and I stayed here. And I have lived here my life as an immigrant and tried, to bring food to my home, working and trying to make progress. And at the same time, the experience of many immigrants is like we feel like in between worlds. And I guess that doesn't happen only to immigrants because I have felt like this in Colombia. I guess we are all in between worlds. Sometimes it's more, you can feel that more. But for a long time, I worked in what we um, call results measuring, management, public sector, social sector. It is something that I have always liked to serve. And after a long time, one of the love of my life is talking with UTEC, this association that works in the northern areas. I live in Boston, and this is in northern part, in an area where there are lots of gangs, there are lots of young people in an area that used to be a prosperous areas, and then the industry lived, and there is now uh, uh, poverty. There are people who have had problems with justice, who have come out of criminal prisons, and this organization is in charge of uh, being with this, getting to know these young persons and taking the young people out of the delinquents' lives, supporting them, helping them find um, a home, psychologist, and also helping them to finish their diploma or work, preparation for work. One of my experiences is that I came to this organization, and there are always lots of conflicts. And I realized that it's easier for me to be and live in conflict because that is what I'm used to. It doesn't scare me. It's not that I want it, but conflict exists. And in this organization, there was always conflict, and it's not that much problem because here I'm already 20 years here and working on that because um, Latin communities here are not exempt of conflict. And so I was saying in this organization and told we have to do and organize a healing circle. We have to call and invite all the young people, and we have to invite the members of the police. And I say, oh, what are you talking about? And really, it was the first time where I was able to find again what I experienced in Colombia, which is how to have a ritual or a circle, a healing circle, where in this particular experience is that they are all very similar. You're seated in a circle, and in the middle, there is something that has a sacred value. There is a person of the community, it, it has respect for that. And so there is a ritual uh, starting, and we just sit there and without any tight schedule, and we sit as a community, and everyone talks about their truth. So there's a totem that is distributed from one person to the other, which is a, a way of giving the floor to the next, but also center the spirit that at that moment my word is sacred. My word is important. What I say is going to represent who I am. So we all sit around that circle and we talk. And what impressed me more is that in that particular circle, there were not only young people, some of them coming from gangs who are enemies between themselves, but there were also government people from the different agencies, the police, people from the community, and they all talked about their truth, the pain that they had or felt from their point of view. There's something particular in that, Juanita, in this story that you're telling. This totem is repeated in many communities around the world. In Thailand, for example, they use this practice, and it used in Australia to have these meetings and talk and share the truth. We just have a couple of minutes, Juanita, but I like that with this story, you give us a reflection of why it is important to consider this type of practice. What can you achieve with them? Well, first of all, is that we don't need to be kind of winning all the time. When we sit and have a discussion, we uh, al- almost always try to convince the others. But in this type of practice, it's only being there. I'm offering my being, but I'm also, most of all, offering my being to listen to the other opinion. So this helps it, and opens a possibility for healing. And sometimes it happens, then you have a circle and uh, you share your healed heart. Sometimes this is the beginning of a healing process, but there is something at the level of spirit, at the level of heart, that transform your attitude to the pain of others. When you hear and we listen to what the others are going through, and to start with this change in that moment of dignity, this is very important to start healing. If there's no dignity, there is no possibility of healing. Thank you, Juanita, and how powerful this is. And I have to ask Hector one of the questions from our audience, and I'd like to connect that question with what you were talking about, relation with nature. How does ayahuasca work? What risks does it have? It could be a question, to talk about a whole session about that, but maybe we can explore a little about the importance of reconnecting with nature, because ayahuasca is probably the famous one, but it's one of many. And I would like, because I know that you have experience in this connection with nature and in understanding the earth in a different way. I'd like you to share about your experience, and to close, why is this important to maintain these traditions? Well, you're right. And now there is this uh, rebirth of the use of medicinal plants at the global level. In the United States, in Europe, there's an impressive interest from the scientific sector to invite healing through those plants. The first is to connect with nature. You don't have to use, any peyote, any in ayahuasca, everything. You can do this, but I hope in a place that is prepared with someone that can accompany this, because there are no easy trips, or in therapy that you can use this. And I will give you an example of those who like to scuba dive. There are people who use this as recreation, and it's not that. This is not for this, but it's like this. Put on your mask and see the little fish, the little corals. But when you make this for therapeutic medicine, you can go down 50 to 100 meters and look to the depths of the ocean. But when you use this spiritually, when you open to that, it's, you know, infinite. It's we are, infinite beings, all of us. You're ancient. Yes, we are. And all that knowledge is there, in these 73 trillion cells that we have, this ecosystem, marvelous ecosystem that is our body, that contains so many things, viruses and so, but you can feel that and see that with clarity, with the guidance of sacred plant, that you have to be careful. You can see all your history, also your ancestral history, that Commovisians had it very clear. Now we talk about their epigenetic legacy. It's not only us who are healing, we are healing generations behind of us. In Colombia, here, the longest war in our history, we are healing, but that war has allowed us to have the half of our country where there is a whole big forest. So responsibility is now the capacity of answering to this historic moment in which we are at this moment, where this ending bloody war can have and make sense for humanity. And then we will be able to reconnect. But again, you don't have to use medicinal plants. They can help you, of course, but we use circles or concept circles, like Juanita explained, but we also use a ritual that comes from deep ecology, the truth mandala, or as I said, the truth mandala, where guerrilla, paramilitary staff, community members tell their stories, and we realize that you are not different to my. It's that you. I had meditation. You chose the weapons. I traveled. I had another way of processing um, my hate, my uh, impulse of killing. It exists in me. I'm not only a victim of torture, I have tortured also, but fortunately in my theater, in my poetry, I haven't had to do harm someone else. But we don't all have access to this. The original communities, the traditional communities, know that the individual doesn't have to heal alone. It's a work of the community to again connect the tissue of that person that for a reason disconnects from that symbolic universe. Lots of things to say, but I'd like to leave some time for Mayra to close. Thank you, Hector, and that's marvelous what you just said. And I have a question from Maria that connects with Omaira. How do these practices integrate in health interventions in communities? And how are we able to understand the importance of the awareness of connection that you were talking about? You talk about spirituality, nature, and I think there's no one else better than you to close this session to tell us how we can integrate all of this in our processes as community. I believe that first of all, the colonization, it puts us in the center of all this influence, learned influence that we have. And how do we integrate this? In the process, building process, women uh, have to work precisely because um, the traditional knowledge is associated with it. It goes hand in hand, For example, if I would like to heal from the Western knowledge point of view, I would like to heal from the traditional point of view or knowledge. I would focus if one of the areas that Hector mentioned, because not only the plant healing, but also the advice. It's like if you would go to a psychologist and if you go there and have therapy. And this is the way, for example, when we talk about the spiritual topic, if we want to connect and want to have a healing and embracing, I go and embrace a tree, because the trees are the source of water. As according to our stories, the water comes from the roots of a tree, where the sources of water come. And it's the roots of the trees that are watering all, the 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 flows and the different currents, and where the rivers uh, um, are born. And that is important, as my grandfather said, in the morning. Without talking to anyone, you have to connect spirituality with that nature spirituality. And precisely when we talk about beginning a treatment with a psychologist, this is similar. It's going to along that way, and how to connect with the world, with what I think is the disease, how to heal from the inside and how to heal from the outside. So that it's where we can see the interactions. And for example, here we cannot discard, and that in regard to social interconnectivity, uh, the young people are prone to social risks. For example, our indigenous populations, our young people are linked to, um, you know, to uh, to delinquency, and now they are have been have been victims to all of that. And maybe the war is not only about going to war, and war is also uh, takes place in the psychological area and affects women most. And that is why women today in Amari, we are from that platform, we are considering that the traditional knowledge have important tools and have alternatives to heal. For example, Amari has a topic and counseling. We talk with young women, young people, and making them leaders in traditional knowledge, and how this uh, shows you how to empower women so that women continue doing the restoration. Why are we talking about restoration? Because we need to bring back that traditional knowledge that have been there for many years in this struggle, where women are there as medical assistants, as pediatrics, as teachers, as leaders in all areas. So in this spaces where we are now, it's about how we are training and learning also. I've learned from Juanita today, for example. I've learned from Hector. I've learned from Gabi today. So I think that this is the way how we are integrating from the experience, from the practical point of view. For example, I heal today with what I've heard. Um, I'm healing psychologically because mental health, maybe it doesn't exist in my language, but I can adapt it to my way of how to heal. So I believe that uh, this is a way of how we integrate that knowledge to our knowledge. So when we do this, a connection and that experience, we strengthen what we are already sharing from our working platform, which is the uh, Artisan Women Association, because it's there where women, we don't talk only about traditional knowledge, but also how we embrace all that knowledge that comes from the outside, and how we can adapt to it positively. I don't know if I answered, but yes, this is the way how we live this together and experience this together in practice, how we have experienced this from a positive manner. Thank you, Omaira. There's no better closing words than this. So from this session, I invite you to take this with you, which is the awareness of ourselves, but at the same time with the other, with this also basic principle for art and theater, which is the integrality, to stop seeing things separately and to realize that everything is connected. If we want to change something, we will be changing other things. When something affects us emotionally, it will affect the physical part, and at the end will affect the nature and all our community. And that healing is a process, an individual process, but at the same time collective, but individual at the last time. So I also would like to thank these panelists who were here with me today, and knowing that we will meet soon in other sessions, and maybe in September in the Wellpin Summit in Bogota, Colombia. And I'd like and hope to receive you here, but I also invite you to remain connected during the rest of the sessions today. They are in English language, but they have also simultaneous translation. So thank you for this space. Thank you, Glasswing, and also the 2030, and talking about mental health. So we hope that we learn, connect, and learn from this, and most of all, that we do community in this. Thank you all for this conversation.